back to another episode of Brown Girl White Coat. Sorry if I sound a little congested, I'm just getting over a cold. The purpose of today's video is to kind of talk about, what if you don't want to be a traditional student? What if you don't want to go through 4 years of undergrad and then go straight into medical school, PA school, PT school? Typically, for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with the term gap year, or if you're pre-med, I'm sure you've heard all about it and people's different experiences, whether they are good or bad. I'm just going to go ahead and define it. So a gap year basically is, typically people say year, singular, but it can be any amount of years in between graduating, getting your bachelor's degree from whatever university, and then matriculating into medical school. Typically, to be able to go straight through 4 years and then getting into medical school, you would have to have all of your application materials put together pretty much the summer before your senior year of college and have everything sent in before the application deadlines the fall of your senior year. However, there are some people who do not take that traditional route. Like myself, I am considered a non-traditional student. Sometimes taking a gap year is very intentional. You just know you're not the kind of person that you want to go through 8 straight years of intense, grueling school. Or maybe you apply and you don't get in, so then you have to take a couple gap years. So more about my story. I was a student athlete, and so I wanted to take an intentional gap year off, which meant that after graduating, I was going to self-study for the MCAT for a couple months, take it hopefully at the end of the summer, which is not recommended. People recommend that you at least take it earlier in the summer or maybe even the spring of your senior year, so that if you need to take it again or more than once, you give yourself that wiggle room. But I was going to take it at the end of the summer and then apply early fall, and then have that 1 year be the year where I just work, chill, travel, save up some money by staying at home, and then start the following year. I went to Books A Million. I brought the Kaplan 7 or 8 book set, to self-study for the MCAT, and that lasted all of about 2 weeks, maybe not even 2 weeks, maybe like a week and a half. And I realized that self-studying was not for me, which I can probably make another video about like MCAT study methods and such, but just, a little background. You can either self-study, which means you gather your own resources, you make your own little schedule, and you study and you take your tests and you see how that goes. Or you can do one of those Kaplan courses or Princeton Review courses. Originally, I did not want to do one of those classes because they are expensive. And I also just figured with the timing, I had the whole summer to do absolutely nothing, to just study for the MCAT, but it didn't work for me. I wasn't moving as fast, I figured that I would be able to finish one book in about a week. Well, it took me about 1 week to really master like one chapter, so that was just really unrealistic. Then I also found myself just being really, really bored at home. I mean, picture yourself living out of your parents' house for 4 years. You leave the house and you get pretty used to being on your own, having your own responsibilities, your own space, being on your own schedule, and then suddenly you're thrusted right back into your parents' house again, on their schedule, not in your own space, don't really have any freedom. And I'm also in a city that, I'm from Houma, Louisiana, which is like a small city / town. But it's not like New Orleans where there's always something to do, always something to see, always something to get into. If you're bored on a Friday, Saturday afternoon, or even a weekday, I'm sure there's something you can find, whether it's, art or live music or sports, entertainment. And I was just really just bored out of my mind. And so I was like, okay, 1, I'm bored. 2, the studying thing, self-studying is just not working. I was like, I need to figure out a way to get back to New Orleans, and I need to figure out a way that I can study that my schedule is made for me. So I figured my parents wouldn't let me just pick up and leave and come back to New Orleans after graduating if there wasn't a reason to. Maybe I should go back to grad school. I kind of heard that it was a thing that pre-meds were doing as, a gap year or just something that they can do to help improve their application. And so the good thing about my master's program is that there was a built-in Kaplan course, all paid for. Of course it wasn't paid for, it was included in our tuition, but it wasn't any extra money out of my pocket that I had to put out. And the Kaplan course was built into our class schedule, so it wasn't like it was interfering with anything else I had to do. The books came with it, and they also gave you this online class code that you had access up to for like a good 18 months or whatever. So even if I took the test and I needed to retake it, I still had, a couple months wiggle room where I still had access to all of these practice tests, question banks online. So not only was I taking this Kaplan course that pretty much laid out everything I needed to study, when I needed to study it, how I needed to review, when I would review, when would be a good time to finally take a full-length practice test, when should I review these things. I was also in grad school, and so I purposefully scheduled, picked classes for me that I knew would be useful on the MCAT and eventually, probably useful in med school as well. So, taking biochem, taking anatomy and physiology, taking cellular neuroscience, all of those have basic science topics that were going to be covered on the MCAT, and it would help me reduce the amount of studying or reviewing that I would need to do, because once I got in the psychology portion of the Kaplan sets, half that stuff I had just learned in cellular neuroscience, because neuro and psych kind of cross over, or a lot of the things in the biology book was anatomy and physiology, and I had just taken anatomy and physiology, so that was really helpful. So because I did do grad school and studied for the MCAT while I was in grad school, that now meant that instead of taking one gap year, I would have to take two, because like I mentioned earlier in the video, the way that the application cycle works, if I had wanted to start medical school right after grad school, I would have had to take the MCAT and apply the summer before grad school. But of course that wouldn't have worked out, because like I said, I was, oh, hey puppy. That wouldn't have worked for me, because I went into grad school as, to help improve my application, even though I didn't necessarily know that my application needed to be improved because I hadn't applied yet. But I knew that it would give me that extra time to study for the MCAT and, just mentally prepare myself for what taking science classes and only science classes would look like in a school setting. And so that is what gap year number 1 consisted of. Now, gap year number 2, what most people would consider a real gap year, because people don't really consider a gap year a year where you still are in school and taking classes. I had to find a job to help sustain me over until med school started, and a job that I could also use to save up some money, because once you're in med school you have no continuous source of income. And so I wanted something with good benefits, good hours, something that would be fun, something that I would enjoy. What if I teach for a year? It's something that I know it only lasts for a duration of a year, so I wouldn't have to feel bad about quitting, because after the year was over, it's only 1 year. You never have weekends, you never have overnights, you never have holidays. You have good benefits and insurance and really good pay. All I'm responsible for is my rent, my dog, and groceries. So, I had enough to cover all of that and some to still have a good bit saved up for when I'm in med school. Ended up getting three interviews. Interviewed at one place, didn't hear anything back. Interviewed at the second place, took a while to hear something back. Then I heard an interview about the third place, and literally the day before I was supposed to go to that interview, I heard back from the second place, which turned out to be the place where I taught for a year, and it was Stella Worley Middle School. So shout out to them. I actually gave my students all my social media information, so I'm sure some of them are probably watching this video right now. I gave them that after I left, not during, because that would have compromised my job. Anyways, gap year number 2, I taught. So this was definitely not the experience that I thought it would be. You know, as being a student, of course, for a majority of the life that I've lived, you know, you only see one side of the story. You know, teachers don't just show up. It's like, okay, we're gonna do this today, or here's this worksheet, or let's watch this movie. Like, it takes so much planning, so much discipline, so much organization to be a teacher. Not only that, it takes a lot of patience. Like the school that I worked at, it wasn't, you know, some all-girls Catholic school in the suburbs. You know, it was inner city New Orleans kids who, you know, struggled. Not all of them, but majority of the school came from a population that struggled financially, emotionally, socially, academically, behaviorally. As a whole, our school was, you know, struggling a little bit. And so that's also something I really didn't take into account. I probably should have done a little bit more research to see like what the school environment is like before I went into, you know, that situation. Because not saying that that's, you know, it was just hell or anything, but for a first year teacher who's also not certified, who also didn't go to school for teaching, I don't have a master's or a bachelor's in early childhood education or education in general, like that is just a lot for a first year teacher, is all I'm saying. And then the, you know, learning curve is steep, like just having to learn how to work with peers. Like not only that, another first was, it was my first full-time job in general. I've only ever worked, you know, small odd jobs every now and then during the summer. I didn't work at all during college because obviously I was an athlete. I didn't have time to. So like just a lot of firsts for me. But in the end, I would say, you know, it's not an experience that I would go back and do any differently because I learned so much about myself. Like I mentioned this word earlier, but discipline, I thought I was disciplined and I was wrong. To wake up every morning at like 5:45 and go do something that you were not passionate about. I got up and I did what I had to do, but it had to be my choice. Of course I would have slept in every morning, you know, but to find the discipline to get up every morning and do that when it's not something you're passionate about, when you know it's going to be something temporary, is just grueling. Also, having to deal with parents, that's something I've never had to do before. You know, I thought I had good social skills. I thought I was good at expressing myself. I thought I was really good at controlling my emotions and not being able, you know, to show outwardly what I was feeling in my facial expressions or in my words or things like that. But lo and behold, that's something that, you know, something that I wouldn't say it was revealed to me that I was just awful at it, but really appreciated, you know, for this year in that job is that it showed me, it revealed to me a lot of things that I really could improve on. You know, we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, but it's never ever too late to work on yourself. Another thing that job really made me appreciate was, you know, my parents, my upbringing, and my education. Because those are some things that I often, way too often, take for granted, you know. Sometimes I might complain that my parents were too hard and, you know, in my business and whatever, but for a lot of these kids, their parents were absentee, or they were there but just didn't really have much say or a care in, you know, what was going on with their child and their grades. Or, you know, I'm trying to call home and I can't even get in contact with some of these kids' parents because maybe they've been working, you know, all day. So I'm not saying they're a bad parent, but the circumstances just, they're not able to be there for their kid as much because they're trying to provide in other ways. Whereas my parents worked, but they were still able to be there for me at the drop of a dime. If they need to run to school for anything and everything, like, they were there. And they also instilled in me the importance of education. I think that's one thing that's lacking with a lot of these kids, this age, not the kids that I worked with at my job, but kids in general, just this generation, they really, really, really have a disregard for the importance of education. Like, just talking to my little brother the other day, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you think your occupation will be when you grow up? And he tells me he wants to be a gamer. A gamer. I would not be lying to you if I told you that he's not the only 13-year-old kid that I've heard that for. A lot of my kids said they wanted to be YouTubers, gamers, professional athletes, and not that those things aren't, attainable. Of course, we tell the kids all the time, you can put your mind, you can do whatever you put your mind to. But those things are, one, not really realistic, and two, I feel as though that they're settling for that because that's all they see. And that's one reason why, I want to be a doctor. I mean, there's the general reason, because I want to help people. But I want to be a doctor because I want to go back to my community where I grew up, where there are a lot of people who, get stuck in this cycle of poverty, and they only aim for what they've seen their parents or their aunts and uncles get into. Uncle Jimmy, he works at McDonald's and he's doing just fine. So if I do that too, that's fine, And okay, if you really have a passion about the food service industry and that's truly what you want to get your hands into and work your way up in a company one day and own a McDonald's chain or make your own, franchise, then sure, that's awesome. But it's not okay when that's what you settle for. And I feel like the kids nowadays are settling so often because their minds can only go as far as what they can see, So I want to be that role model that I can go back into my community and show them, like, look, this is where I came from, this is where I grew up, and look what I am. You can be a lawyer, an educator, an architect, an accountant, an engineer. You don't have to settle for doing hair out your mom's living room because it makes decent money. Challenge yourself. Go to school, get an MBA, open your own business, and now you can be a beautician, owning your own shop, renting chairs to other beauticians who are coming out of your community. It's just things like that really gave me, hi Kobe, really gave me, an extra push, an extra drive in, really wanting to pursue this MD thing. I'm probably going to do another video later on, why should you be a doctor? Why do I want to be a doctor and such? But that was just a little snippet of, what my 2 gap years were, what they taught me. And of course, there's lots of other things that people have done with gap years. I know a girl who I'm going to start school with that, she just worked in retail and she just chilled and traveled a little bit. I know someone who did research. I know someone who is doing a grad program that lasts longer than 1 year. So it's not a post-bac, it's an actual grad program. I think it's 1.5 years or maybe 2 years. And she's looking to start, her med school journey soon. I think she's taking the MCAT this summer. So there's lots of other things that you can do with your gap year, but I just wanted to share what I did with mine and what they meant to me. For my next video, though, I'm really excited to do this because I've always wanted to do something like this because I love sharing, my personal story, my thoughts, my opinions on topics and such. For my next video, I'm going to do like an all about me, get to know me type thing. And so I'm asking you guys, my subscribers, to comment below anything and everything that you can think of that you want to ask me. And, of course, as long as it's relevant and appropriate, I will answer it. So, I posted a video asking for my followers on Instagram to do something similar. And just, as an example, I already got one question that asked, what did you make in your MCAT and what study methods did you use? So, of course, this is Brown Girl White Coat, so I'm going to be talking about a lot of med school related things, but feel free to ask me anything as it pertains to, hair. Right now I got my cornrows in, or, fitness, or my life as a student athlete, or, to share my faith, my testimony, what I'm doing this summer to prepare for med school, etc. Also, stay tuned. I have some footage that I promised some of my students from my homeroom class that I would feature them on my YouTube channel. So I just wanted to do something, encouraging for the younger generation. And I asked them, what their name was. I asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up, if they knew. And they're really cute, and they're actually all about to enter into high school. They were my 8th graders. So it's just amazing to think that they're in 8th grade now. I'm starting my first year of med school coming up in the fall. So by the time I graduate and I'm a doctor, they will be graduating from seniors in high school and hopefully going on to college. So I just think it's crazy how we're all going to be on this. What are you doing? I just think it's crazy how we're all going to be on, this similar journey, exploring uncharted territory in our world, new terrain, learning how to adjust, learning, on a learning curve, because, things are definitely different and much accelerated from what it is from middle school to high school as it is from, college to medical school. So, I hope you guys like it.
My name is Ennis. I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. And I want to go to Duke. I want to go to Duke University.
All right.
Hey, my name is Christian. I want to be an entrepreneur and cosmetologist, and I want to go to Southern University.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Hi, my name is Mona. And when I grow up, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I also have, options of anything else. So,
Okay. And do you know where you're going to go to college yet?
I don't know.
You don't know yet? Well, that's okay. You're only in the 8th grade. It's fine. You got time.
Is there a choreographer to dance?
I want to go to Southern University.
Yay. Okay. Drum sweep. Whoop. That's okay. All right. Go.
My name is. I'm going to SUNY or LSU.
And what do you want to be when you grow up, if you know?
Dance.
Dancer. Okay.
Hi, my name is Corinne. I want to go to Yale, and I want to be a lawyer.
Okay.
My name is Ari, and I want to be a registered nurse, and I want to go to Southern or Yale.
Hey.
My name is. I want to be a beautician. I want to go to Duke University.
Cool. Okay. Who didn't I get? Sorry, do you want to be?
Love you.